thank you for joining us for the Relational Leadership Summer Blitz session. There is a QR code there where you can scan the QR code to sign in if you are looking to receive SCECH credit. There also is an opportunity to access the link via a link that will be posted alongside the video. But if you're with us now, we encourage you to use the QR code or use the sign-in link that we will supply at the end. As you know, if you're watching this, it doesn't matter if you sign in today, tomorrow, or the next week. We know that part of the beauty of Summer Blitz is that you can watch it on your own time or join us live, as some of us have done now. So as we think about relational learning, I'd like to certainly acknowledge the trainers who trained me and certified me in relational learning. It is the Center for Relational Learning, which is found in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And what will start us off is what the originator of the center, George Otero, likes to remind us of. Being grounds us, belonging connects us, and becoming propels us forward. And as we think about relational learning, the grounding and the connection is really at the heart of relational learning. We think about the people first and set the projects aside to develop those relationships that we know help to drive forward things past the surface and deeper into the work that we want to accomplish with families and schools and community. So I'm blessed to be coming to you certainly as a Wayne RESA employee, but also as a MiFamily Center Region 10 coordinator. And so keeping family at the heart is definitely important to my role and the work that I'm blessed to do with MyLeap across the state. We do have 10 family engagement centers, and very quickly, when you think about MiFamily engagement, we are funded by MyLeap, but we're administered through ISDs or RESA, as Wayne RESA administers our Region 10. Each of the 10 centers has a regional coordinator. I serve as the region coordinator, and we support cradle to career. So that's a wide range. Perhaps some of you watching have one of those roles where you support everybody, including those not just inside the school, but outside the walls and connecting with community. So it is a coordinated statewide effort that involves 10 centers throughout our state. As I mentioned, we are Region 10, so that makes us Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb. And right now, we most likely are talking to Wayne County, but know that our partners also are Macomb and Oakland. So we have a great chance to work regionally across those three areas. When we think about MiFamily is grounded in relationships, and that's where we like to start with our components of really what is MiFamily. It starts with our framework, and these are the MiFamily principles. You can see that family, educator, providers, community, that's everyone. So when we think about our family engagement framework, we certainly are thinking about the families in our schools, but also who are those families connected to outside of the school walls that we know play such an important role in the work that they do, developing and growing their children, and also impact the work we do inside schools. But core to our work is that yellow circle at the top. Relationships are the cornerstone of family engagement. And everything that we do starts with relationships. And that's why we have our relational learning to consider, where do relationships play a role within our school systems and our community organizations? And if not yet, how can it be a driver for student success as well? When we think about family engagement, the MyLeap or Michigan definition for family engagement is a partnership among families, students, educators, and community partners built on trust, respect, and common goals so that every learner thrives. And that first phrase is essential to what we do. We see families as partners. We see community as partners. And because a partner also collaborates, co-designs, we seek out those opportunities to co-design, coordinate with families, not simply provide and give to them. We want to have them involved in the process. So we'll think a little bit about that as we think of our learning today. How are families really involved in the work that we do, but also the decisions that are made? And if not yet, how could involving them more really help us to see student achievement rise as well? When we think about our essential practices, the MAISA GELN practices, it spans from the birth practices all the way through disciplinary literacy, but I highlighted it here in our pre-K to 5 practices. When we think about the values highlighted there, these values also align with the MiFamily framework around relationships and partnerships. We value caring learning environments where children, families, and educators have trusting relationships with one another and feel supported to learn and take risks. That is a big value. There's a lot there. And we ask ourselves, without the relationship, will anyone, whether educator, family, child, feel like they can be a risk taker? If I don't have a relationship with someone, most likely I'm not going to take a risk either in my thoughts, words, or actions because I don't know how the other person might react. And so when we think about the benefit of a strong relationship is that whether I agree or disagree with you, I feel that the trust is there for me to raise my voice. And so we ask ourselves within the settings where families are invited in to be collaborators, to be co-designers, do they feel that they can be risk takers? Can they lift their voice and be in a space that's supported? Again, the power of relationships, bringing past the surface and going deeper into the work we want to do. We also look at our school-wide practices. We consider those organizational practices that leaders and systems thinkers lean into to say, if we do these things, our schools will be strong. We look especially at practices 8, 9, and 10 that lean into that collaboration with families. We think about out of school time, whether it be summer or after school. And then we look at practice 10, a network of connections in the community. Right? They give students that audience and that support outside of school. And so practices 8, 9, and 10, again, lift up the importance, the research supported importance of really having a strong relationship with families and community so that students can thrive. So as we shift into thinking about what does it really mean to be relational, leaning again into one of the gurus of family and community engagement, Dr. Karen Mapp out of Harvard. She works often with Ann Henderson, who is also a guru in the area of family engagement. But Dr. Mapp says parent and community ties need to be an essential ingredient, not an add-on. So they need to be part of the mix. If I'm baking a cake, they're the flour, they're the sugar, they're the eggs, there's something essential that's needed in order to bake the cake. It's not the frosting or the sprinkles or the cherry on top that makes it look nice and maybe be a little sweeter. It needs to be an essential ingredient. And if it's not yet, why not? And how could it be? And so that's what I encourage you to think around. If it's not an essential ingredient yet, how could it be? And what if it was? What benefits might come to the school and especially to the students? So we asked ourselves, okay, relationships, yes. I get relationships are important. Most everyone would raise their hand, give me a thumbs up and say, yes, I believe relationships are important. But why does it truly matter? And so when we lean into some of the research, we know that, well, it matters because you'll see your students get higher achievement. Research supports that students, whose families are engaged, they tend to, not 100%, but most tend to get higher grades and perform better on standardized tests. Now, that never is going to be our number one reason for doing what we do, but it certainly would be a benefit. It's a reason. When we look at some of the meta-analysis, it lifts up that parent involvement is associated with higher academic achievement. And that's a meta-analysis of 448 independent studies. And what was amazing and uplifting is that throughout those studies, it was lifted that regardless of the family's income, education, or racial ethnic background, it mattered that they were involved. And so it wasn't any kind of differential. It was out of all of these studies, parent involvement is associated with higher academic achievement, no matter what the place and space might be where they live and work. And so we really need to consider, wow, this is powerful. It also matters because we see higher attendance rates. That is something across the state, across the nation, that we are challenging ourselves to lift up and raise up. How can we get students in their seats more often so that we can engage them and support their development? Well, we have evidence that supports that strong homeschooler relationship drive better attendance. And certainly that's something that we know, but it's also one of those things that we perhaps don't always focus our school improvement goals on or our activities or strategies. And as we again look at the research, multiple studies show that targeted family engagement interventions can directly boost attendance. Here are a few examples that were listed from some of the research. Sending home monthly nudge letters, so to speak, with personalized data. That had shown reducing chronic absenteeism by 10 to 15%. But let's consider what the tone was. First of all, it names that it was personalized. It wasn't a blanketed letter that everyone received. And also, key is written in a positive partnership tone, again, in the family's home language. So 3 things there that we might lean into. It wasn't a generalized letter. It was personalized. It was positive, perhaps lifting up how often the child was there and the benefits of being there. And third, perhaps most importantly, it was in the family's home language. Those 3 things are relational. We also see the benefit in our research when we have the opportunity to do home visiting. Now, certainly we see that in early childhood, but then for numerous reasons, it doesn't often continue into elementary, middle, and high. What if it did? What if you wrote a grant around stipends for teachers to have the opportunity to engage in these home visiting programs? What if there was funding? Gosh, what a benefit that might be. Relationships also matter because it supports positive behavior and social skills. When schools prioritize family relationships, often we see improvements in students' behavior and social development. And let's think about why. So when we think about this really leans into that transactional versus relational approach. And so as a school leader, an educator, a systems thinker, we want to consider, is our school a transactional environment or is it a relational environment? And here are some ways to think about it. When we think about our communication, is most communication informing the parent, or is it a 2-way opportunity where we not only push out the information, but also pull it in? We think about the focus. Is most of our communication with parents about come to this event or do this thing, or your kid hasn't been to school, please send them? Or is it around shared goals, a partnership, something that's mutually beneficial for both sides? We also think about the role. Is the parent's role simply to receive the information and do as they're told through that communication, or are they invited to be co-creators and contributors? Certainly being a co-creator, it takes a little more time. It takes parents saying, what is this? What do you want me to do? What might I do? It's more effort. But when we think about the power that we just considered around the research, better attendance, better behavior, potentially better scores, all of those things schools are striving toward. How might we get there through bettering our relationships along with our curricular actions that we also must do? When we think about transactional versus relational, this too, we might consider in our current state of our school. When we think about any meetings we might have, we consider, is it to simply fill out a form, to give updates, or is it relational where there's time for conversation, maybe even storytelling, or it's focused on connecting parents with each other? So when we invite parents in, what is the purpose for it? When we think about perhaps maybe a meeting based in compliance, perhaps it's required that if you're a title school, you're having a Title I meeting or something around title compliance. How do you start that meeting? Is there an opportunity for parents to come and converse, to perhaps share in small groups around what they're excited about for the year, what they're concerned about for the year? Is there a chance for parents to lift their voice so there's a shared balance of power within the meeting? Or is it simply a time where they're told, this is what we're teaching, this is what we're doing, here's when the conference is, here's what your child must do at home? You can already tell, right, the feeling and the tone of that. So really, we ask ourselves, what is the current tone of our meetings and purpose, and how is shifting them towards a more relational approach a great start to really welcoming parents into our spaces? We think about even the duration. In a transactional approach to meeting with parents, after the event ends, things are done, right? Whether it was a one and done, a 3-part series, a big event, once the thing is done, it's done. In a relational approach, there's a continuation. There's something that keeps that sustaining work, that sustaining focus going. There's more relationships there. It's thank you for joining us here. We look forward to seeing you at this next opportunity, or lifting your voice here, or an opportunity to come back and contribute toward this thing you heard about. There's that extra effort. And that last piece to consider, during a transactional approach, oftentimes you might see parents being a little more reactive. They're not quite sure what they're going to see or do or hear at the meeting. And oftentimes then we see that more of a reactive approach. But when we think about a relational approach, we're going to consider it to be a strength-based situation. We're going to start with the strengths of the child, of the families, of the community. We're taking really that positive intent, right? We're assuming positive intent in every way that's interacted or voice is lifted with a family or with parents. So we'd love you to consider whether you're with us now or you're watching this later. It might be a moment when you pause the video if you're watching the recording and really think around this, but would invite you to consider what's one practice, routine, or tradition that feels more transactional than relational? And which relational approach could help strengthen it? So this is a little sneak peek into our full day series. At the end, I will share, we have trainings coming up, 3 of them throughout the year. We have a full day training in relational learning, and we go deeper into this. But when we think about relational approaches, these are the things that we think about. Even selecting one of these can really help strengthen it. So we ask ourselves, in a relational approach, things are invitational. People are invited in. They're not told that they must or that it's a compliance. It's an invitation. We invite you to. It's appreciative. We're always appreciative of the time, the talents, the effort, and that comes through in the way we speak and how we set up the room, the environment that we create. It's voluntary. So when we're thinking about sharing or lifting voices, it's never a must. So it's not everyone shares this. It's an invitation and it's voluntary. It's always okay to say no, thank you. To our best of our efforts, it's co-created. And that's a little more difficult to get to. But when we see a relational approach to working with families and community, there's an opportunity for co-creation, whether it be part or whole. There's an opportunity for something to be done together. That's really powerful. And it's activating. There's some kind of doing. We're activating our well-being. It's not just a check-in, a temperature read. There's something active about it. We're doing something together. There's something produced or worked on or contributed to. And always it's playful. There's always some kind of play in it. If we were together, we might be playing with some wind-up toys. We might be kind of doing some fun interactive movements. There's just some way that it's playful. It's never so serious that we can't smile or chuckle. Serious work is done, but there's some sort of play in it. We've lost the art of play. And relational learning and leadership brings that play back. So as you consider that transactional versus relational approach, you might name a certain meeting or a school of routine, or it could even be a systems-wide tradition that just feels more transactional. It doesn't feel like it's welcoming. It doesn't feel like the relationship is at the heart of it. And ask yourself, how could adapting one of these approaches help to shift it from transactional to relational? It could be as simple as, how do we invite parents to fill out back to school forms? What does it look like when we host our back to school nights or anything around the back to school? Something there that makes it potentially feel transactional to families as opposed to relational. What could shift that? So something to consider as we think about how to shift from transactional to relational approach to learning within schools, we might consider even the first 10 minutes. So when you think about a family starting at the curb and coming into the office or classroom, what's the interaction? What's the experience they might have? And so we asked ourselves, in the first 10 minutes, what would a new family experience when they walk into your school? This might be something that you simulate this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, where you say, I'm not sure. I always come through the staff entrance, or it's been a while since I've parked in the family parking lot or the family space, or walked from a spot in the neighborhood if you're a walkability school. But give it a try. What does a family experience in the first 10 minutes? And by experience, we say, what do they see? What do they hear? What do they read? How do they get into the school? What if they can't get in? So you really take on the role of the family and you take notes. Perhaps it's a 3-column chart where you say, what did they see? What did they read? What do they feel? Because seeing something could be, what do they see with the grounds of the school? That could be a little more aesthetic or safety related. But what do they read is going to be any of your visuals, whether they're signs, symbols, do this, don't do this, park here, ring this, do that. And think about also that extra layer of, what if I'm a multilingual learner? What if I am someone who perhaps is able to converse in English, but perhaps my home language is still what I mainly read? And we consider all of those things and say, how would it feel to be a new family or a new student here? What does it say? And so we pause to consider, what does a new family experience when they walk into our school? And what tells them that you belong here and we're glad you came? Now we remind ourselves this. We remind ourselves that if our research consistently demonstrates that meaningful family-school partnerships contribute to improved student learning, attendance, engagement, and school climate. And again, that comes from Dr. Mapp and Bergman. When we think about Dr. Mapp's dual capacity building framework for school partnerships, again, something that we go into in our full day, but also especially in our MiFamily network, if you're interested in joining that learning with us as well. But if we think about, gosh, if building more relational partnerships with families in a meaningful, authentic way could bring these improved things, improved attendance, improved learning, improved school climate, right, improved student behavior, what's stopping us from doing it? What's the guardrail that's saying, not today? Well, what if it was the day? What if this year was the day where we said, families are going to be partners in this work? And it might be a little messy, it might be a little uncertain, but we're going to make that our goal. We want families to be partners in the work because we want students to thrive. We want them to be here more. We want them to achieve what we know they can achieve. We want our school to feel like a place where you want to be. It might be as simply elegant as our family's partners. And if not yet, what steps can we take to shift that toward a more relational approach? We consider again this kind of sequence of not only families, but really anyone coming into the building. So we first invited you to think about, what would it feel like to go from the curb to the classroom, so to speak, or the curb to the office? What would it feel like for new families? What would they see? What would they read? What would they feel? Now let's think about that relational culture. Let's think about how perhaps as a leader or an educator, you're here learning, you're thinking about this is on your mind and on your heart and on your desk. You're like, yes, relational learning. But we know that school climate, school culture is built through that entire habitat of the school. And so how might we lift up the importance of this as it goes from leader to front office, to teacher, to support staff, and eventually to families? Think about that backward planning, how a family interacts with multiple entry points. A family might interact first with a support staff, or first, especially with the front office. How do we ensure that no matter whom the family interacts with first, that there's that relational culture that's traveling through? And so we'd invite you again to pause and consider, if a family interacted with any of these people, would they experience the same commitment to listening, dignity, and partnership? That might again be something that you do a little experimenting with, a little research. If I'm a new family member or a new student, what is the experience when I come into the front office? Again, what do I see? What do I hear? How am I greeted? What do I read? What happens if I'm not sure what I need? What happens if I'm not quite sure who my teacher's name is? What if I'm late? What if I don't know why I'm late or can't quite name? And so we play through all of these scenarios, because even though it might feel like something minute, it's so important. The first experience that you have in the front office could be how you feel about the school. Some parents don't have the opportunity to go past the school office. That is that main experience. And so how do we work with our entire school team, everyone in that important ecosystem, to say, are we relational? Or are there times when we unfortunately present ourselves as more transactional in the way that we speak, in the way that we ask or invite families and students to fill out forms? What is that experience? And it's so very important, because in the back of our minds, we know, well, research supports that it affects students' attendance, it affects their behavior, it affects their perhaps opportunity to excel, their learning. And so if relationships really matter, We're going to take it on our hearts and minds and desks, but we're also going to address it throughout that school ecosystem. And so when we think about the opportunities to be more relational as opposed to transactional, it really starts with something internally within us, within our hearts and minds, but then it also goes out to our desks and our space and our community to say, how else is that presented towards families and community and what they see, what they read, and how they feel when they are in our spaces. We lastly want to think around this relationships first approach. As I mentioned, this is just a sneak peek into the full day level 1 training that we do at Rain Risa. There are currently 3 dates listed. We have an opportunity to learn once in Oakland, once in Wayne at the Fisher Theater, and then once in Macomb. And so there are 3 different dates, 3 opportunities to learn, each hosted in one of our MiFamily Center counties. We want to kind of leave with this piece. What are families really learning about us? With that relationships first approach, again, it's a partnership. And we really want to consider, where are we transactional by habits? That might be a little more internal observation, a little internal reflection, but also throughout our systems as well. And what are those routines or traditions or just activities that tend to be more transactional by habit or by nature? And how might shifting them to be more relational really benefit our school and students? Where are we already relational? So again, starting with a strength-based approach, most likely you have many ways that you yourself, along with your team, really are relational. Maybe it's something you've really been working on as a school culture, school system, to say, how can we really see parents as partners, not just say it, but do it? Lift that up as examples, and then do some study around it. Say, well, we really are intentional in this approach to really partner with families, and here are the benefits that we've seen. And then take that win and say, well, if we can do it here, what would it look like to do it here? And what, again, might the benefits be? So it's not something we're going to sweep through the system all at once. It's a conversation all at once as a system, but we're going to take small chunks and say, okay, this has always been something we've just done. It's been a check the box kind of thing. How could we shift that to make it more relational? And what would the benefits be to students and families? So it might just be naming. What's one practice we can shift as we begin this year, as we come together back as school teams, as school learners, as a community ready to welcome students? What's a practice that we might shift from a transactional to a relational approach to benefit students and families, and then study it? Look for the smiles, look for the interactions, look for the feedback, look for the extended conversations, look for the volunteers, and really see the benefits and the growth from that. As we consider that every interaction is a message, and let's make it one of belonging, trust, and partnership as we work to see families as partners and as learners within the systems we call school and community. If you'd like to chat more, I would be more than happy to. It'd be a happy conversation, a blessing as we consider our work. Again, we have our MiFamily network that meets 4 times throughout the year across the county. It also gives you access to our MiFamily mini grant, which is monies for schools and community centers to do the good fine work of family engagement and try out something new, to be risk takers. And then we also do have the level 1 trainings coming up as we think about really how to make our schools and communities a relationship first approach. So I want to thank you for your time today. If we were on together in person, we would sit down, we would chat, we would talk about where are you now and where would you like to be. But for now, we're going to stop and give you some blessing of time so that we can continue our learning and conversations off the recording.